My mom was only 30 years old, with 4 kids, in a country where a single mom is treated and seen as a second-class citizen. She couldn't work and went into depression. There wasn't any financial income in the house, so she started selling anything that she could, including our clothes, our toys, and our furniture. It got to a point where the only thing we had in the house was a mattress in the floor. And that's how I grew up, eating bean tacos every day for several years. And for me it was fine because it was all I knew, but for my mom it wasn't. She will be in her room crying all the time, and I remember several times my siblings and I had to wait for her to pick us from school 4 or 5 hours later because she just couldn't get out of bed. Life was very hard. When one of my mom's Christian friends became aware of her situation, she reached out to her and shared the gospel with her. We immediately received Christ in our lives, and the financial situation didn't get better right away, but we got to know God in a very personal way. I remember on my 8th birthday, we had just finished having lunch, and I asked my mom if I was going to have a birthday cake. So my mom went into her room and locked the door and started to weep. She was just crying, and it was that cry of a woman who was helpless and a cry of a mother who can't give something to her children. I was too young to understand what was happening, but I just knew that I had made my mom cry. 5 minutes later, someone knocks on our door, and a local bakery had just opened in the neighborhood, and they were giving away cakes to the neighbors as a promotion for the grand opening. So I had my cake. In situations like these, we learn that when Christ is the only thing you have, you realize that He's the only thing you need. He was always there with us. 20 years passed, and I will still remember my childhood and all the things that I had to go through. And I realized that for 20 years, I had been asking God, why? Why did I have to go through that? Why so many bad things? Well, last year, my wife and I started visiting an orphanage in Ensenada, Mexico, just 200 miles from the border. We began to know the kids' stories and how they were abandoned. And I realized that as a kid, I didn't go through half of what these kids have gone through. But in a way, I can relate to them. I know what it is not to have a single picture with your dad growing up. And because I can relate to them, I've been able to help them, to point them to Christ. By serving these kids, I realized that through my childhood, God was preparing me to serve these kids. Now I can thank God for that adversity because He was the potter and I was the clay. And as the potter, He had me go through the fire, but at the end, He crafted this vase that can be used to glorify His name. Muchas gracias.